All right, guys. So, hey, welcome. Glad y'all are here. Welcome in-person peeps. Welcome online peeps if you're watching this after the fact. But we have a treat today. We have Tess Vaughn with us. And Tess is a family friend for many years now.
Many years.
6, 7, 8 years. She was a member back in the day. Trying to maybe recruit her to get back in.
I am.
Slowly but surely.
I am.
So we have been sending people to Tess for years because, you know, what she does is a little above our pay grade in terms of the small stuff. You know, we know the biceps and the quads and the hamstrings, and she knows all the ticky-tack little teeny-weeny muscles that, you know, have a big effect. And I think my favorite thing about Tess is when we send people to other physical therapists, they just say, stop doing everything you're doing, which is annoying as a gym owner because it's like, well, our members want to lift, they want to work out, they want to work out to high intensity. And so that's the thing I like about you, Tess, is that when we send people to you, like, one of the things you do is like, well, what do you like doing? You know, do you like running? Well, let's get you back to running. Do you like lifting? Let's get you back to lifting. So that's the thing I've always appreciated about you. And not only that, but she's just dang good. You know what I mean? At helping people. So, and I think another thing too is like some, and I'm making big generalizations here, but you know, some physical therapists or chiropractors are, sometimes they'll tend to put Band-Aids on stuff instead of like getting to the root issue and like, let's solve the root issue and then we don't have the issue. So that's another thing I appreciate about you. So anyway, without further ado, take it away.
Thanks. All right, so who does pee when they jump? Run, jump, yep, I do when I run, I do when I jump rope. All right, unless I pay attention to what I'm gonna be teaching you guys to do and then I don't. All right, so do you guys know anything about the pelvic floor? Do we want to start at baseline of pelvic floor? Okay, so basically what happens is that you have a lot of group of muscles that start at the front of the pelvic floor, which is urethra, and it goes to the anus in the back and almost acts like a slate. So it's like this, right? But what can happen is with injury, past low back pain, past injuries, even from the ankle, it doesn't matter. It can be post-babies, it can be young kids, it can be adults, it can be anybody. Then what happens is you lose that communication between the muscles. There's a whole group of muscles that communicate together and work together, and if they're not all working in the order that they're supposed to, then you start getting weakness of the muscles. It gets lazy, and then that can be what happens when you start peeing. It's called stress urinary incontinence because you're putting stress on that pelvic floor.
So it's not called germs.
It is not. It is not. Yes. Exactly. Yes. So that is what is happening. Is you're not getting the communication, or the muscles are weak, or there's an injury, but it doesn't necessarily have to be an injury of just your pelvic floor muscles. It can be an injury in the back, it can be hip, it can be different things. Okay? So you have 4, maybe 5 groups of muscles that all work together. So the transverse abdominis, which is the deep low muscle in the abdominal wall. All right, you have the multifidus, which are tiny little muscles that connect vertebrae to vertebrae in the back. You have the diaphragm, it controls the breathing up and down, and then you have the group of pelvic floor muscles. So the TA, the transverse abdominis, and the pelvic floor muscles work together first. They come on before any other muscle comes on. Okay? And then after that, then the other muscles start to come in and come into play. And then the big muscles, like being able to bend over and pick something up, anything like that, they come in last. So the pelvic floor and the TA work on what's called a feed-forward response. So what that means is if I'm walking along and I know that I'm going to pick up that piece of paper, before I even get there, there's already a message in the brain saying that I need to pick up something. So the pelvic floor and the TA contract automatically in preparation. And then the bigger muscles allow me to go over and pick that up. There's a reactive component, know it, or a graded component too. So it's going to be a different contraction if I pick up that piece of paper or if I pick up that 20-pound ball. The muscles are not going to contract at the same intensity, right? That they don't need to. The body's always going to work in the best way that it can. So it's not going to overwork and over-contract something if it doesn't need to. Okay? But if that pelvic floor and that TA is shut down for whatever reason that we already talked about, then it's not going to come in and do what it needs to do, so you're going to pee on yourself, or you're going to have back pain, because those core muscles are not coming in to protect before the big muscles start to do their job.
And remind us one more, like, just to be clear, why is it that those muscles aren't, doing what they need to do?
Yep. So it can be from a past injury. So you have a back pain. You do something, you hurt your back. Those muscles kind of shut down, and they have to be retrained. If they're not retrained, they remain kind of silent and not part of the whole chain of doing their job. So it can be from that, it can be from having a baby, it can be literally from an ankle injury that never got corrected, and there's a deficit in the motion, in the strength, in how you move, and then that's going to affect the chain on the way up. So it can be various reasons why it shuts down.
And what is it about having a baby that creates injury,
yep.
quote unquote?
So some of it can be posture. So think about yeah. So it can be something as simple as just the way the baby grows, and then the diaphragm changes because it can't do its normal excursion up and down, and then you change your posture with the baby, and until all of that is corrected back again, you'll be in a deficit. Those muscles are not working in a balance. It can be an actual, if you've had a cesarean, the muscles aren't working right. Yep, because you haven't retrained those deep ones again. It can be from just a stretch, an episiotomy, anything where there's a tear and it hasn't been retrained again. So that contraction of, I need to pick that up, so this is going to contract, should come on automatically. It is not something you think about. It is the way God made us. But what happens is if it shuts down, you got to retrain it, and it doesn't know to do that until you retrain it, which was what can happen. And studies have shown you can have a back injury years ago and not currently be hurting, and still those muscles are not firing like they're supposed to from that previous injury because it was never retrained again. If you think about the pelvic floor as any other muscle in the body, it is not anything special. So if you have a knee injury and you only do quadriceps and you don't do anything else, that knee is not going to be normal. You're not getting it back because you haven't trained it, you haven't trained the muscles around it, you haven't trained it with speed, you haven't trained it with work, you've just trained one muscle in one thing, which is why Kegels don't work. Okay? You need to be able to contract, and Kegels are good for that. But just doing a Kegel is not going to change anything because you're not putting it through any kind of a load, any kind of force, any kind of activity. You're doing one contraction just like if you were only doing a quad set. Does that make sense? Okay? Answer your question?
Yeah, and just to validate what she's saying, Leah had some pretty significant low back pain 6-7 years ago, and literally you taught her how to, do what you're about to teach, and her back pain totally went away.
You got to retrain them.
Now she's got some different back pain that's chronic, but and we're still working on that. But that low back, and she literally has to so sometimes she kind of forgets it, and then the pain will kind of come back, and then she's like, oh, I got to get back on my exercises the test gives me, and then she gets back to good.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that's why it can come back again if you have another injury, you do something, those muscles are going to shut down again, you got to retrain them. You got to go back to those core base exercises again, which are some of them. I'll teach you some of those. All right, any questions so far? No? Okay. All right, so let's talk about how the muscles all work together also. So if you think about the diaphragm, when you take a breath, that diaphragm pushes down on the organs, right? And then the organs push down, and then the pelvic floor kind of lengthens. All right, when you exhale, the pelvic floor pops up, kind of like a spring or rebound effect. Everything raises back up again. So on inhale, everything goes down. On exhale, pelvic floor contracts, everything comes back up. So when you are sitting here breathing normally, that is happening without you really being aware of it. But if those muscles aren't working normally, they're not. not getting that movement. It's either the pelvic floor may stay contracted the whole time, or it may be that it's not really rebounding back up again. And so you have to teach all those muscles what they do so that you can get that effect again. Does that make sense? Okay? So posture is huge. It is one of the easiest things to work on to get that pelvic floor and that TA to do its job again. All right, so I'm going to look at ribcage, pelvis, breath, and weight shift on your feet, and we can practice all of that. Okay? So why don't y'all stand up? I'm going to take my shoes off. That's okay. All right, let's talk about ribcage first. So I'm going to stand to the side. Is that okay that way?
However the best for you.
Yeah? Okay. Here. All right, so what happens is your ribcage, your pelvis, your feet all have to be kind of stacked on top of each other for that diaphragm to get its movement, for the organs to go down, for it to get that excursion. So if you think about ribcage first, it's at the top. If you have what we call a bells, these are our bells, rung up. All right, so get that position where you stick your boobs up. Now try to take a breath. Does it feel natural? Okay, now kind of tuck bells down, bell rung down. Now take a deep breath. Can you feel like you're getting any kind of excursion? Okay, now try to stack your rib cage over your pelvis. So everything is here. Now take a breath. Do you feel like you're getting a bigger breath? So that is just one small correction right there. So when you go to work out, you're thinking bell rung up, bell rung down, bell neutral. You're finding your bell neutral. Makes sense? Good?
It's like ringing a bell, like.
So up, yeah, you gotta find that middle, find that base. All right, ready? Now we'll talk about pelvis. So your pelvis, if you look around at people, you'll see the ones that come in with kind of that pooch belly because they have that anterior tilt. Yep, and then that automatically rings the bell up sometimes. All right, so if you're here, try to take a deep breath. Do you get much excursion? Do you feel anything? Right. Now, you also will have some that have a flat butt, and what that's happening is you're getting a posterior tilt. All right, take a breath there. Can you feel that excursion when you're pooched under like that? No. All right, so you want that neutral position. The best way to find it until you're aware of it is to go to that full front, called an anterior tilt, full back, find that middle. Now think about your rib cage. Is your rib cage still centered over your hips? Y'all can tell me if I'm not. No? Yeah? Everybody's good? All right, now take a breath. Feel good? Feel better? Feel more natural? Getting that excursion? Okay, now, stand, normal, just wherever your feet are normal. Shift back into your heels. All right, for right now, think about rib cage, think about pelvis. We'll just keep it simple. Now, do a Kegel. Does everybody know how to do a Kegel? Like you're stopping from peeing. All right, where do you feel that contraction? So really think about it. So do it, feel it. Do you feel it more on the anus side or more on the front side? Back? All right, so think about that. If you do your exercise, if you do a deadlift and your weight is shifted back on your heel, you're contracting here, you're not contracting here, you're gonna pee. Make sense? Because you haven't brought that muscle in. Now, keep everything still centered, rib cage over pelvis. Now do almost like a ski jump lean, so you're not bending over, you're just shifting forward a little bit. Now, contract your muscle. Kegel, where do you feel? Front versus back, okay? So when you go to jump rope, when you go to do anything, you want just a little bit of a forward lean. You want to think about your rib cage. You want to think about your pelvis. Good? All right, now take a breath. And then, can you feel it? Normal? Good? Feel it more from the front? All right, now, breath is important. So when you take a breath, a lot of us, I do it bad, which is why I have these big, huge SCM, sternocleidomastoid, because I breathe from up here. And that happens also in pregnancy because you can't take deep breaths because you have this belly in your way. So you start breathing from up here. But you want a deep breath, you want a belly breath. All right? So go ahead now in here, take a breath, but think about breathing from your belly, like almost poofing your belly out a little bit. That's over-exaggerating it, but that's what you want. So the breath should come from here. You're actually still breathing a little higher. Can you feel it?
Yeah.
So you shouldn't see or feel your rib cage come up at all. You should feel here. The other thing you want to feel, put your hands on your rib cage. do that belly breath, and you should feel the rib cage go here, out. It's called a lateral movement. That's the kind of breath you want when you're exercising, when you're going to do a lift, when you're doing anything. You want that breath here. Now, if you can, try to breathe from high. Do you feel your ribs moving? A little bit, more up and down versus out. Exactly. Yeah. So if you can't, if the breath isn't, if the ribs cage isn't going out, you're not getting that full breath from down below. The diaphragm can't go down. The pelvic floor can't react. Okay. All right. So things you pay attention to is where's your belly, where's your pelvis. Find that neutral. Get a little bit of a lean forward, not exaggerated. Breathe from down below. Let that rib cage come out. You get that belly breath. That's your form before you start anything. It's a lot to think about. All of that is a natural, automatic reaction when everything is good. You don't have to think about it. Your body automatically does that when there is no problem. But you've got to retrain your body to find that position, find that neutral again.
So
and it's going to take a lot of thought.
You're saying before we jump rope,
yes.
Before we deadlift,
yes.
Before we squat, before we kettlebell swing, before we do any of that.
Exactly. You got to think about it. So when you do your jump rope, it's going to be a little bit here, and it's going to be this, not back here on your heels. All right? Because remember when you did it, the breath on your heels, where did you feel the contraction? Back here. That's not going to keep you from peeing.
And we definitely see a lot of this during jump rope. A lot of
there
this
you go.
anterior tilt.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you want to make sure, even if you're watching your partner, I don't know if you want them telling each other, but the biggest thing is that bell rung up, girl. Sit them down.
Stop ringing your bell, girl.
Yeah. So it is a lot to think about initially, and you do this like any other exercise. You don't start a pull-up and be able to do 20 of them, right? You got to train it. Pelvic muscle is the same way. You got to start light. You got to do low repetitions. You have to do slow speed. You got to get that muscle reacting on its own first before you start challenging it. You can't go do a full max deadlift without leading up to it, right? Pelvic floor is the same way. You can't overwork it or ask it to do too much too soon, because it'll just continue to stay shut down. And then the other muscles come in and do the job, which is why you would continue to have back pain or other things. Yeah? All right. Any questions with that? No? Okay. You want to try some things?
Yeah, so are you going to show us like some actual exercises to strengthen that?
Those are the big things that I want you guys to do. That is just something that you have to think about every single time. That is your exercise. So when you're standing in line at the grocery store waiting, think about where you are. Think about where you're breathing. Visualize that pelvic floor on the inhale, everything kind of going down. On the exhale, it comes back up. Now you don't want to do a big contraction of your pelvic floor on the exhale, right? Because you're asking it to do too much for something too light. But if I have to go pick up a heavy thing, I'm going to contract that pelvic floor a little bit more when I go down and pick it up. The body does that automatically, normally, if there is no injury. That's what you're trying to get back to. It's not something that you always have to think about after you've got it trained and it does it naturally. But those things are your big ones before you try to work it and do however many sets of double unders. If you can't do single jump rope without peeing, you're not ready for the double unders. It's just part of the process. You can't jump from one until you get to the other. All right? The other thing, before you have, especially like a heavy lift, you want to blow before you go. That's just an easy way to remember. So, you're getting ready to do a deadlift. You're in your position. Where is your bell? Where are your hips? All right? Now, what you're going to want to do at this point is you do your umbrella breath, right? So you're breathing from your belly. On the inhale, everything's going down. Okay, you're going to start your exhale, feel that pelvic floor engage, and then go to pick it up. So you're going to blow out because remember the pelvic floor contracts on the exhale. It rebounds back up. Yes? Make sense? All right, blow before you go. You have to make sure everything's there. You're in that forward lean. you get your inhale, everything lengthens. On the exhale is when you actually do the work because the pelvic floor is engaged at that point.
So we're gonna get situated. We're gonna inhale.
Inhale from the belly.
See, I'm doing it. Chest.
Yep. Inhale from the belly.
Belly, and then I'm gonna hold my breath.
Go ahead and get
grab
in
the
position.
bar, and then as I begin to lift, go ahead
Exhale
and
because
begin
the
exhale.
pelvic floor is engaged at that point.
Okay.
Yes. And again, these are things you have to think about, and it's a hassle. You want to get in there, you're trying to get in however many reps in however many minutes. Yeah. But until you get that under control and it becomes just automatic in your body, you'll continue to have problems. I have to think about this every time I run, because when I run, I pee. But if I really think about my breath, I can go, I did a 55K trail run. And I never peed on myself. But then I can go out and run 2 miles and not think about it, and I'll pee. So it really, I really have to think about it when I'm running for right now. I have a bad ankle, it all comes up the chain. Yeah.
That's good.
Yes.
All right, so we're gonna do a quick 8-minute Amrap practice session. We're gonna go 25 single unders, 5 deadlifts with a super light bar, just back and forth, slow, practicing what
I'll
Tess
give
is
the
talking
cues
about.
each time.
Yep.
So for the jump, let's just go over that a little bit. So you have your jump rope in hand, all right? Before you jump, where's your belt? Where's your pelvis? Good, find that neutral. A little bit of a lean forward. Inhale from the belly. Exhale, jump. Okay? All right, now as you go, because you can't stop each time, regroup, go again each time. Yeah, you may initially, especially if you pee a lot, you do want to back that down. But if you're able to pee some, not pee some, if you're able to, don't want to pee some. If you're able to jump however many reps before it starts to kind of leak a little bit, then that's when you start slowly increasing your speed. You can do some, and then you reach a fatigue, right? Just like you reach a fatigue when you do a pull-up. You reach a fatigue when you do bicep curls, right? There comes a point where the muscle just is like, I'm done. I'm out of here. Can't do anymore. Pelvic floor is the same way. Every muscle, they're all the same. Don't treat the pelvic floor any differently than how you would treat any other muscle when you're working it.
So what you're saying is literally, like, let's say you have a bad problem with the peeing during single unders or whatever. You're literally saying, get in position, do one jump, and stop.
Yep. Or get that just a little bound.
Until you get better.
Yeah. And then get a little bit faster. And you go until you hit your point of fatigue, wherever that happens to be, where you start to leak. So that's your baseline. All right, I know I can do 10 before I start to leak. So I'll work at 10, then I'll add 1 more on. And then I'll add a couple more on until you get to where you want. And then you increase speed. And then you increase double unders.
Let's say they're feeling like they're, need to pee or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Should they go pee or not? Should they not pee?
You go, you're gonna go. At that point, stop, regroup, think about everything, because when you fatigue, instead of running at first, because again, running, pull-ups, anything, once you hit a fatigue, you lose your form, right? It's out the door. So you may have lost your form versus anything else. Yeah. So before you automatically run, just stop. Think about where you are, bell, pelvis, breath, lean forward, go, and then slow it down and see if you can control it just by fixing your form first. But then you have to, instead of just automatically running.
And then same thing.
Because it could be form. Right. It could be that simple. Yeah.
Everybody sees me. There she goes.
How many can you get in? How many into the jumps can you get usually?
It varies.
Yeah. See, and that's good. You're able to go some. It's not like you're peeing on the first one.
Right.
So that's good. So you may just have reached your fatigue and that muscle is just not used to it. So stop, think about your form, and see if you can do any more by just changing your form and your breath.
Okay.
Breath is huge. The more you can visualize the diaphragm pushing down, the pelvic floor lengthening on the inhale, and reversing that on the exhale, you'll see a huge difference in how much longer you can go before you pee. Just breath.
And then same thing with running.
I was going to say, that's what I did the same thing
Yep.
the day before, running to the bathroom, because I was out here running.
Yep. Nope. Just think about your breath. To me, that has been the changer for me, is thinking about, I visualize what is happening. I'm I'm not really actually contracting because I'm not asking my body, I'm not putting a big demand on it, right? Double unders, it's a bigger demand. Jogging's not as big of a demand if I'm used to doing it. So I don't want to do a full Kegel every time I take it. You don't want to walk around contracting your abs. You're not supposed to. All right? The body is supposed to move. Everything moves. All right? So the more that you keep everything contracted, walking around with your stomach tight, the muscle's going to fatigue out. So then when you ask it to do a job, it can't because it's already tired. All right? So you have to let that excursion do its job. So one thing, just so I don't forget, to start training into double unders, you can do what are called penguins. Do y'all know what penguins are? Do you know this? Exactly, yeah. So, and then that's just a lot easier. So you go up, you double tap. But you're thinking about how you're landing. You want to land on the ball of your feet so that it can automatically be ready to go. And remember we talked about when you go a little bit more forward, it contracts in the front. When you're back here and you're landing on your heels and it's a hard, sudden boom, you're contracting more from the anus. That's not where you need it at that point. Okay? So you have to think about keeping that lean as you're doing it. So practice your penguins at home before you get in there and have to do it for speed, reps, whatever. Okay?
Any more big questions before we practice? Go ahead.
So if you run on your heels more, is that making things worse?
It is, because it's the same thing. You're just going straight back, and it's making the back part of the pelvic floor come in more than the front part of your pelvic floor. Best fix for me for that is run barefoot. Initially, just in the yard somewhere, like 20 yards down and 20 yards back, not like you're running for 3 miles or anything, because your body won't let you hit your heels because it's too much pressure, and you're going to start changing your mechanics without even realizing. But you can't feel that through shoes. Yeah, that's good. And you're not on your toes, it's more the ball of your feet. You also want to make sure, do you want me to talk about running? Sorry.
Let's save that for another.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right, we'll do a running one then.
You can do it super quick, you know.
The biggest thing is that when you're running, you don't want to overstride, okay? You want your forefoot to hit pretty much under your body, so gravity is just kind of taking you forward here. You're not here and have to move your body. Does that make sense?
Is that like
so think about
pose method, kind of?
Could be.
Similar?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay.
With that. So you want to make sure to shorten your stride a little bit. Think about where your feet are landing, and then just do some runs barefoot. Not long ones. I mean, like a couple minutes or something. Just so that you start to feel it, and you'll be surprised how much it changes on its own. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I have a protein. I drink a protein before I work out.
Yes.
And then I usually drink a ton of water.
Yes.
Does that matter, or should my body be able to hold all that for the whole workout?
I would definitely prepare and try to drink all of that before so that you can empty your bladder. I mean, you don't, naturally. I mean, even if you don't have a problem, you're not going to run with a full bladder anyway. So you want to try to time it so that most of that can be out before you start, because you're just putting another demand on the body already, if you have the pressure there.
Okay.
Yes.
That's
Yep.
weird when you really kind of look at the breathing aspect, because, I mean,
You automatically went into the chest.
Yeah, I do it as well.
it's not.
I do it. Yeah, and I find I do that too, when I think about it, yeah.
Well, because when you do this, you're like, well, gosh, I don't want to
Exactly.
think I'm
My
fat.
balance,
You know,
yeah.
Proof it out.
And
Like,
if
I own
you-
a gym. I can't be fat.
That's
You know?
right.
It's like,
You gotta And if you think about it more, it's really about the rib cage going out, but the way that the rib cage goes out is by breathing down low, not up here. So it just happens to be a side effect that the belly kind of goes out. But sometimes it's the cueing is better for people when you say breathe down low, kind of put the belly out, versus telling somebody to do a lateral movement of their rib cage. They're like, what is that?
yeah.
All right.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I hope this was helpful. And if you want or need more help from Tess, they can find you how?
Actually, Clint has my cell phone number. You can do it that way. That's probably the easier way. Clinic is called Medical Rehabilitation Systems. It's in Winterville. You can call there. I do insurance through that way. If you're paying cash out of pocket or you have high deductible and you don't want to do it through insurance, then I do that separate. So just let me know. Clint knows how to find me.
Yeah, and I'll post her contact info on this post in the private group. So, hey, thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
In
y'all.
person. Grab a jump rope if you want to. If you guys got to go, that's cool. But if you want to practice this, grab a jump rope. Grab a light deadlift bar, like very light, like no more than 45 pounds total.
Yes.
All right.
We're looking at form.
See y'all later.